Everybody check out Doug. Say hi, Doug. Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to Second Chance Overland. I have a new special project in the shop. This one is a little bit different from some of the stuff I've done in the past, but I'm really looking forward to it. So let's check this thing out. That's right, we bought a RZR. This is our new 2023 Polaris RZR Turbo R4. Really pretty excited about this. We've had some RZRs in the past and really liked them, but we ended up with really nobody around us that had them and can go have some fun with us. So now my good buddy down the street, Keith, which you've seen in some of my previous videos out at Maris and a couple others, they've had RZRs for a long time and know some great places to go, so we just couldn't resist. And as I'm sure you would expect, after seeing any of my other videos, I just can't leave it stock. It's just not me. So I have a bunch of boxes of parts, and we're gonna get started on getting them all installed, so stay tuned. All right, so the first thing that I want to do on the new RZR is to install a street legal kit. Here in Oklahoma, we can actually street legal side-by-sides and drive them around town. From the factory, they don't come that way. So there's no turn signals, there's no horn, there's no license plate bracket, any of that kind of, no mirrors. So I need to, if I want to drive this thing on the street, I need to put a street legal kit on it and make all those things functional. So what I've ordered is a turn signal and horn kit, street legal kit from Ryco Moto. So these are the instructions here, and this is what the kit comes with. So you've got your turn signal stalk and horn button and hazard switch. This will get mounted to the steering column, a number of different harnesses, license plate bracket, another harness, and then new headlights. Now on previous models of the RZRs, they had these kind of fang lights that went down the side here. They've changed that now. It's got this light here. And then these are just basic headlights, high beam and low beam, and then a LED. So these new lights look pretty much the same, but this actually integrates your amber turn signal into the LED around the outside. So, and then on the back, it will actually use the existing tail lights for your brake lights, which already work as brake lights, and also as turn signal lights. So we're gonna get started on this. Should be fairly intense with all the wiring. So it should be interesting for sure, tearing apart a brand new RZR and getting this installed. But hey man, let's have some fun. So let's get going. All right, so the first step is going to be to actually mount the switch to the steering column. So on the switch itself, there's this bracket with these slots in it. So that screw clamp is going to slide in through those. And then here on the steering column, again, I have the telescoping steering wheel. If you don't, it comes with some shoulder bolts to put in here. But that worm gear screw clamp will go through the bracket and around this, and this will end up resting in there like that. So I'll get this mounted up and then I'll show you when I'm all done. Okay, so we've got the switch mounted. You can see right there that little plastic piece, that's the cover that goes over the screw gear, goes down through that gap right there. Then tighten it up at the bottom. And you want to have this clock just a little bit off center so that when it goes in, I'll show you here, it doesn't hit the steering or the instrument cluster. So with it all the way in, it slides just underneath it. If you have it too high, when you try to go all the way in with the steering wheel, it'll hit the gauge cluster. You route the wires up behind the dash here. So I just use some masking tape to hold this up. You pull this tray out and just set off to the side. There's a USB power cord, so you can just set that off to the side. And then you run your harness that's attached to the turn signal stalk up into this cavity right here. And as you can see, there are a number of connectors. There's what, 6 of them here? And they are all marked on each one. The hard part, honestly, is figuring out which harness is which. You get a small picture with the instructions that shows each harness and what it's called. Most of them are kind of wrapped up, so you can't really, in my opinion, you can't really see exactly what it is. So I've got some harnesses here. This is the flasher relay, and got these lovely instructions, which they say in the instructions that you know, make sure you read it. And it's actually kind of funny to start that if you're a guy and don't read instructions, give it to your significant other so they can. So they try to make some jokes about it and then talk about how great their instructions are. And I'm starting to wonder if maybe I'm just not good at following instructions, because I'm having a hard time with this. Some of the things just don't match up. So anyways, we're gonna see if we can figure this out. So it looks like we need to connect the turn signal horn switch harness. Actually, the turn signal horn switch harness is what's hanging out there. So we've got the self-canceling flasher relay, which is this. We're gonna connect that. We're going to the power and ground harness, which I believe is this one right here. So this power and ground harness, there is a green tab or green wrap on it, which does match up with what it says on the instructions, and it is a 4-pin. So you've got a red wire with a fuse, another part coming down with a couple of just spade connectors, and then a couple of bullet connectors. So I believe that's the correct one. So the next step is to install the horn. So let me see if I can figure that out. And yeah, we'll go from there. Continue to be frustrated with this already. So it now says to install the horn here to a bracket on the radiator support. So there's our radiator, intercooler, all that fun stuff. Now how I get to it, it doesn't say. So previous razors had a panel here that you could just quick turn and pull off. This no longer has that. Unbolts here, and then I don't know what. So this could get very interesting, guys. We'll see what happens. All right, so pulled a couple panels off. And as you can see, there is an awful lot to see here. A little frustrating. I have a feeling this thing's gonna be torn apart pretty far here pretty soon. All right, so I've got the entire front end, all the bodywork ripped off of this thing. Just trying to figure out where this horn goes. So the instructions with the tiny, tiny little picture show a clear hose coming off the radiator with the coolant in it. Obviously this is not clear, and almost kind of shows it bolting kind of straight like that, but there's obviously nowhere to do that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bolt it, if I can not drop it. So this bracket coming off the front tube here, bracket comes off where the radiator mounts. So I'm going to mount it right here, just kind of right down in there. Once I do that, then I have to run the wires for it. And the instructions, again with tiny, tiny little picture, says to run the harness through the grommet and the firewall. So I got to find that. So I'll see if I can find this stuff and go from there. Did find something interesting when I pulled the bodywork off. A random nut, just chilling in there. So we'll see if we can figure out where that goes as well. But man, this is a big project already, and God, I hate instructions sometimes. So hopefully if anybody's doing this, I can get this figured out and this video will help you. If it does, please give it a thumbs up and leave a note in the comments. So I'm gonna suffer through this and figure it out, hopefully, so you don't have to. So figure out where this grommet is or where to route the wires, and I will show you that here once I figure it out. Okay, so I found the grommet, and it is on the passenger side, right up there. So I ran those wires down through, and then they come out right there. And then I just ran the wire up here. I put them on the horn first and then bolted the horn to that bracket. Don't think it'd be real easy to get the connections on the horn with the horn bolted in place. So that's what I did, and that should be good. So looks like the next thing is I need to get into the gauge cluster and install that harness. So we will work on that here. I believe it's that connector right there, but I will double check. And again, I will show you once I figure it out. Okay, so on the dash cluster, there's this connector going in. You disconnect that, and then you gotta pry open this cover. And in there's a number of wires, and there's a couple of, well, there's a bunch of blue plastic pins that are filling empty spaces. You need to remove the pins for 6 and 7, and they specifically say in the instructions not to use a metal object to do so. So you remove the pins 6 and 7, and then this is the harness that plugs into those 2 pins, and then to the harness that is connected to the turn signal switch with all the wiring back up in here. So you just look for the wire that is marked correctly. I'm going to clean this all up. I'm just kind of lightly running everything for now, and then I'll clean it up a little bit later. But that's all you do. Plug that all back in, and then we need to move on to the next part, which I believe is the headlight harnesses and headlights. So let me double check that here. Yeah, so we need to install the signal headlights next, and that whole deal, and then we'll move on to the rear. So keep plugging away at it. Okay, so the new headlights are in. There are 3 torque screws. One here, the spring behind it to adjust. Another one up here. Then the other screw, there's a rubber grommet right here. And so that rubber grommet needs to be pulled off the old headlights and put into the new one. So now we can start working on making our electrical connections. So you can see the new headlights have this connector here, and then another pigtail here. So I believe, yeah, so the stock connector will connect into the top built-in connector, and then the pigtail coming off will be the wiring harness that goes to the switch indicator. So we'll get that ran and start getting this thing buttoned up a little bit more. I did have to remove another screw down here so that I can pull the front end back far enough to get my tool in there to get that inner bolt off. So even more coming apart on this thing than going together. So hopefully that'll change soon. Okay, so we've got the harness run to the headlights and back through the grommet in there and up to the main harness up here connected. The next thing that we need to do is the taillight harness. And for that, we need to remove the rear seats, and then it says to remove the clips and bolts or screws that are holding the center console. So it looks like there's a few right here. And then I don't know what else and how far we need to go, but we'll figure this out. See if we can figure out how to route these wires. All right, so the instructions say to basically undo the center console. It said that you don't have to remove it completely, but just to get it loose so you can get up underneath there and run the wires. So after screwing around for about an hour removing things, cup holders that go in here and up front. This panel just slaps in there. I still can't get this center console up enough to be reasonable. So you may still want to loosen some things up, but I've been putting all my bolts down in the floorboard here. And I don't know if you can see it, but there is a hole right here for drainage. And some bolts fell down in there. So I decided to just go ahead and remove the skid plate. And I think that this will ultimately give me better access to run these wires and do what I need to do. So we're gonna try that. There is still another skid plate here that I may have to remove, but hopefully I can get it enough. I mean, I can see there up through where that one piece is, and then I know from the rear cup holder I can get my hand in there and run the wires through there. So yeah, this has been a lot of work, but at the end I'm going to show you the tricks that I learned once I fully process those, and hopefully it'll be easier for you if you're doing this. Hope you're enjoying the video. Okay, so now we can start working on the rear taillight harness. And yeah, so you've got this harness here. So this is marked A. This goes to the driver's side. So you basically plug one end into the taillight. The connector that's currently in the taillight comes out and gets plugged into the other one. So it just kind of loops everything together. So this, fortunately, we can reach up here and hopefully just disconnect it. There it is. Yeah, so disconnect like that, and we'll plug this harness in. So just like that, that's all plugged in. Again, I'm gonna need to work on the wiring. But then this one with the other connections gets routed over to the passenger rear tail light, so I'll figure that out. And then this long wire is what we got to route all the way up to the front into that little center glove box thing. So I'm going to work on routing these, getting this stuff connected, and I'll go over everything out here at the end and show you how I routed everything once I get it all buttoned up. But it's really just kind of fiddling around, trying to figure out the best way to route things through, and definitely making some progress here. So thanks for watching. All right, we are getting close. I've got the rear harness, the rear taillight harness all plugged in and preliminarily routed. So I've got it preliminarily routed, and yeah, so everything's just loose. I haven't, zip tied it up or any of that kind of stuff, but show you what I did here. So you start back here at the passenger or the driver tail light, plug this in, and then you've got a wire that runs across to your passenger side tail light. Now I removed this cover from the back thinking it would give me better access, and started removing a bunch of other stuff, and then realized that two of the bolts I took out allows you to lift the entire engine tray out, and that gives you plenty of access. So I did that. I ran the wire down trying to follow the factory wiring harness. So as I zip tie this, I will route it along there. From there, I was able to kind of sneak my hand in here, and you can see I've got it pulled a little tight, but I'll fix that. Down and through. Then I was able to reach through the cup holder opening, pull it through there. Then through this, I was able to both arms in from either side from the cup holder and this opening here, and get the wire pulled up. From there, it's when it got interesting. So I was able to drop it down there and get it from the underside with the belly pan off. And then I had to really screw around with some stuff on the passenger side here. And what I found is that if you pull this panel back, so if you loosen this whole thing up and then pull it back, you can create a gap right down in this cubby hole here and help feed it through right at the very top here, you probably can't see it, but right at the very top here, right where your left foot would sit in the footwell, there's a rubber grommet that you can just cut a couple of slits in and feed the wire through. Now, getting the wire through there was a bit of a nightmare. I did have to use my handy little grabby tool to get down in there and grab it. So it was incredibly fiddly. It took a lot of time to get it routed that way and get it through there. Like I said, I still have to go through and zip tie everything up. Of course, once it comes through that grommet, you can then feed it up into the main harness here in this upper section. This is a bit of a rat's nest right now. I also plugged in this thing. This is some brake interface harness. So this supposedly is what allows it to interrupt the brake function of the light and use it as a turn signal when you hit the turn signal on it. So next thing I need to do is actually install the license plate, but that's another fun one. I've been looking at the instructions here. So here's the bracket, gives you some self-tapping screws, and it says at the back, by where the engine cover is, to drill holes using this as a template into the metal bar going across the back. Well, plastic, that metal is heat shield. That's the muffler. We don't want to do that. There is no bar coming across here. So I don't know what bar they're talking about, but it ain't there. So I guess I'm just gonna have to bolt this up to the plastic. I'll probably just get some washers and different stuff. I'm gonna put the other panel back on to make sure that I don't have it too far in, which maybe that's not possible with that. So I might have to get pretty creative on this. So I'll figure this out. I'll show you what I come up with. And then once I get everything zip tied nice and tight, the final thing to do is to actually make the power connection. So I'll show you that. But everything else, so I got to do the the license plate. And by the way, the license plate, it does have a little LED light and it has two little bullet connectors. And on the passenger side taillight harness where it plugs in, there's two bullet connectors there, red and a black. So those will plug in there to give you your license plate light. So I'm gonna get this figured out. I'll show you what I end up doing at the end here, or once I get it done. And we'll just kind of go from there and hope it works out. So yeah, on to the next part. All right, so I got the license plate bracket installed. There it is. I did end up just going through the plastic at the back here and put some good sized washers on both ends. So I think that will suffice. And of course I've got the light in there, ran the wire and plugged it in. Again, I've got to zip tie everything up and make everything nice and clean. Last thing I need to do is this. This is what will actually power the entire system. So see if I can get in here halfway decent. So there is somewhere in here, I gotta find it. Somewhere in here there's a connection, bullet connections for these. And then down in there, I don't know if you can really see it, but there are these little plugs. And apparently you just remove one of those and then this plugs in and gives you your power. So I'll see if I can figure that out. Once it's all connected, I will let you guys know. Bullet connectors in, and there's a better look at that panel. So you can see I've got it plugged in on the far right over there. Get the flashlight out of the way of the camera so you can actually see it. But there it is. So there are, what is there, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 plugs in there. So you just release the clip and pull that out, and then you can plug in that aftermarket plug into it. So this thing should be good to go now, finally, for the most part. Of course, I've still got to tie everything up and do all kinds of stuff, but the next part is to test it. So let's see if it works. All right, here we go, fingers crossed. Starts. Left turn signal. Nice. All right, so far so good. Horn works. And even the indicators on the dash work. Man, that was a lot of work. A lot more than I expected. I still got a few things to do. Obviously, I've got to button everything up and put the whole thing back together. So that's gonna be fun. Yeah. So I'm gonna get working on zip tying everything up and getting things started to put back together. Once I get everything routed and nice and clean, I will go through all of the wiring, where I went and how I secured it and all that fun stuff for you. So, all right, so starting at the back here, I just zip tied everything up along the factory harness. Went down the harness here and through there, right along the top of the engine. And then on the driver's side here, you've got the harness coming down here. So I zip tied it to that. And inside, really can't see it, but down underneath this cup holder on the driver's side, there's the harness running along there. So I zip tied it to that. Came up through here and zip tied it up to here. And up to the shift linkage cable. Up top, I zip tied it all bundled together and stuffed it down. And of course, you got the headlight harness all zip tied up, the horn harness. So just try to follow the factory routing, the factory wiring harness as much as possible. So that is all complete now. So now I can actually get started on putting this thing back together. So probably take me a couple hours to do that. And once it's all back together, show you at the very end. All right, so that took a lot longer than I anticipated, but it is finally done. The RZR is all back together now and ready to be registered and used on the street. I also added some side mirrors and a center rear view mirror. So all just stuff to make it street legal. So I've got turn signals front and rear now. I've got a horn, I've got a license plate bracket, just need a plate, and we'll be good to go. So step one of modifying the brand new RZR Turbo R is complete. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, give it a thumbs up. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button. While you're at it, don't forget to hit that bell notification so you can get notifications when the new videos come out. We'll see you next time on Second Chance Overland.